We're back going to start our last session of today, kind of ending it where we started it, talking about the COVID-19 pandemic and how we can design healthier buildings. So for our last session, we have Daniel Huard. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And he's going to be covering the introduction to WELL and the WELL health safety rating. Daniel is a lifelong learning proponent and has long been a sought-after green building expert, so much so that he was affectionately announced as the godfather of sustainability at the Net Zero 2018 conference. Daniel received degrees in mechanical engineering from Niagara College, a bachelor's of architecture, master's of architecture, and master's of urban planning from SUNY Buffalo. Daniel holds many professional designations, including, and these are just a few, Lead Fellow, Lead AP, PMP from the Project Management Institute, GGA, GGP, and GPCP from the Green Building Initiative, WELL AP and WELL Faculty from the International WELL Building Institute. On the experiential learning and mentorship front, Daniel was the senior mentor and lead project administrator for Desert Soul, the UNLV Solar Decathlon 2013 entry, where the team earned second place overall. In 2021, the Department of Energy asked Daniel to be a judge for the 2020-2021 iteration of the Solar Decathlon. And with that, I'll let you get started, Daniel.
Thanks, Stacy. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to jump straight in. So typically, just to share with everybody, we do this WELL 101 workshop, and it's typically 1 hour as an introduction, 4 hours or 8 hours. So if I'm moving very, very fast, somebody interrupt me to slow me down. I'm trying to impart as much information as possible so that you gain the most from our time today. And away we go. Here's our disclaimer that we're not medical practitioners, and this is intended for education purposes, primarily for professionals. Okay, and this is a quick intro slide of me with a little bit of my background and what I do. I'm a global green building professional, practitioner, and actually building sciences guy. I'm one of the rare people who do building envelope commissioning, collaborate with the Department of Energy on that, and do a bunch of other stuff. In respect to WELL in the International WELL Building Institute, beyond being a member of faculty and an ambassador for IWBI and a WELL AP, I was actually on that task force for COVID-19, where we actually came up with the second part of this presentation, the WELL Health Safety Rating. And we'll dive into that. So, how do I impact sustainability? I work to educate and advocate for green buildings, sustainable living, and restorative development on a daily basis. So jumping straight into our agenda, we're going to look at global health and our desire to make a difference. Real estate as a vehicle for wellness, which wasn't something we thought about 10 years ago. Getting to know WELL, the value of better buildings, and we'll get a little bit of Q&A time in. And in between the two halves of the presentation, we'll roll in a quick break session after a little bit of Q&A. So our objectives: identify environmental factors which influence human health and well-being, describe our health effects of VOCs, and I actually just did a big presentation on this only a week ago, outline the requirements for part 1, managing allergies and alternatives, and explain the intent of feature C04 occupant surveys. They'll all be stuff that we touch down in here. And really what this is hopefully doing is providing a means for the attendees to get familiarized with WELL and the WELL rating system and IWBI. At IWBI, we provide a ton of resources to anybody who's interested in learning about it and wanting to practice and make the places they work within and design better. So what does well-being feel like, look like, and sound like? And normally when I'm doing this as a full-on workshop, we'd break out and do a dialogue of before and after of this. So section 1, global health, making a difference. health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So we see these nouns and phrases in there, and the IWBI really took a stand on it to define them within the practice that they follow, so that it was very consistent and aligned with better paths. And I really like the background picture of the Slot Canyons in Page, Arizona. So what are health risks that can be prevented? Non-communicable diseases. And those things add up to a lot in our life: heart disease, cancer, chronic lung diseases, and diabetes. And a lot of these things are based on our exposure and combination of the risk factors that we have. And those risk factors include the use of tobacco, which is one of the proving to be one of the worst things that we can do, use and abuse of alcohol, physical inactivity, which sadly through the pandemic we've seen too much of, and then unhealthy diets are another area where we can see risk factors and take active steps in reducing those. So what really determines our state of health? We have our physical environment, we have healthy lifestyles and behaviors, and medical care. And then look at the small piece of the pie related to what we're genetically programmed to. So what attributes and aspects are related to our family genealogy, what's been passed down to us. So our social determinants include economic and social conditions that influence the health of peoples and communities. And we can say from this pie chart that those things end up being a very large component of our overall determinants for health. And when we're looking at health in a changing climate, we're seeing impacts related to other things like environmental contaminants and healthy or unhealthy buildings, and other influences and impacts that we need to be considerate of. And really, one of the questions that we provide when we talk about this is, how much time do you spend indoors each day? And as we move through this, this number may or may not seem surprising to our attendees today. 90% of our time indoors, and that's the largest determinant on our overall health. So if we're in an unhealthy environment, that gives us more of a propensity for negative outcomes to our health. So health begins at home, which we all spend at least 8 hours a day at. And since the pandemic, seemingly more time in that environment, the time we spend at work and in all the spaces that we frequent on a daily basis. Our section number 2, real estate, a vehicle for wellness. And I actually want to double back to this slide. The one thing that's awesome about doing stuff with WELL and in the whole WELL community is that we have a huge amount of background research and documentation on everything we do. Nothing is left to chance. We document things like global best practices very substantively in order to use them to inform decisions around the furtherance of the standard. So back to real estate and how can it be a vehicle for wellness? The mission behind WELL is universal, in that is that we advance health in the places where we spend our lives. How do we have that kind of impact? And I'm going to share some actual today's data with us later in this. And where we've come from was the initiation of the WELL building standard. And the spring of 2014, when the WELL building standard was launched, I was with them in Seattle at the Living Future Conference, and was one of the initial facilitators in introducing people to the standard. In 2017, the standard developed to a point where we had a well community standard pilot, and IWBI expanded its scope to set global benchmarks for healthy communities at a district scale. I want to double back for a second to the 2014. One of the very first well pilots, actually two of them, in fact, actually happened here. Staywell rooms happened at MGM in one of the specific towers, and Life Kitchen in Henderson, Nevada opened in, I believe it was 2015, to have two pilots of the standard operating functioning here in the Las Vegas Valley, which was really great. When we moved to 2018, all of the information and feedback that we've got and the uptake of the standard helped inform decisions around creating a pilot for the version 2 of well. And that's stuff that we used, outcomes and research to roll into and combine. And then in the summer or in early 2020, after very substantive market feedback and a public comment period, V2 was voted on and launched. And we had just started V2 of well when the pandemic hit us all, sadly. So well is in version 2 especially is designed to work in all spaces, all types of building projects, from things like commercial buildings to warehouses, stadiums, hotels, schools, hospitals, shopping malls. The V2 changes really incorporated a great amount of variety of spaces and the ability to get there with your certification path and really be inclusive of your efforts. So, when we say well is holistic, it really looks at design, operations, and very importantly, policies. What do we do on a daily basis to encourage the development of wellness and more healthy places to work and function and live in? When we look at a comprehensive approach to well-being, the standard version 2 actually has 10 concepts in that framework. And those concepts include well, water, nourishment, light, movement, thermal comfort, sound, materials, mind, and community. And these are performance-based or prescriptive design, policy, or programmatic and operations and maintenance initiatives that we take into place. So in order to get certified, we have what we term our preconditions and the mandatory things that we do, and then optimizations where we get to take on further challenges to get there. And really one of the key things here in the changes and the development to the concept framework was that the preconditions got much more defined and additionally much more inclusive so that we could actually move out and collaborate in more building types and with more organizations to see the uptake of the well building rating system. So when we look at these concepts, and I'm going to touch down on really quickly, and I do apologize for sort of reading bullets, but I tried to condense this as much as I could so that we could get as much material covered in the time that we're spending this afternoon. So the first concept is air, and we look to achieve a high level of indoor air quality across a building's lifetime. And the way we do that is air quality management, air quality monitoring and awareness, so that we know what's going on, how our building's performing, and what we might have to do to improve that. Smoke-free environment was one of those requirements and mandatory things. And we know that with LEED projects, we as well have the requirement to allow no smoking. And the last LEED project that was able to get away with providing or enabling smoking was City Center here in Las Vegas. And they don't allow smoking in the hospitality spaces that you stay at and accommodate in, but they do allow it out on the casino floors. Pollution infiltration management is one of the key things we look to do for air quality, ventilation design, and particle filtration, combustion minimization, isolating sources of contaminated air, a construction pollution management program that very much parallels what we do for LEED. We improve the supply air quantity and quality. And we look to do things like microbe and mold control as well. So we look to ASHRAE to help inform what is best to minimize those potential negative things that we may see. And I like to comment from James, let's stop smoking in all casinos. And I couldn't agree more, James. Thank you. So when we look at well in practice, and there's a ton, literally a ton, and there's, we've done more than 2,000 projects and certified them. So we've got all of these case studies that really touch down on all kinds of stuff. And as I run through this presentation, you'll see places that are well certified. And we have these slides that are well in practice. So they're a case study. So Hayworth Furniture Company, their office and showroom in Shanghai, China, which actually they held a reception there during Greenbelt 2019. A really wonderful facility and really thoughtful on the way it embraced well, and very much at the very high end of what do you do to ensure you got high quality, air monitoring within that facility. The next concept that we look at is water. And, obviously we'd always want to access high quality drinking water and look to do water management. And one of the past hats that I wore was the chair of the LEED Technical Advisory Group for water. And I served on that committee for a long time. I'm currently serving on the LEED Advisory, LEED Steering Committee at the very high end of moving our LEED standards and ratings forward. So this one was a natural for me, looking to instill performance metrics and monitoring. The great thing about WELL is we promote things that are good for people and you earn credits for it. So things like drinking water promotion and how that's better for you. We all know that, the drink 3 quarts of water a day is been an unknown thing to help your health for a long time. Moisture management, Legionella control, and that's something that's actually become big as a result of the pandemic, when we weren't using spaces and then we're getting back into them and ensuring that our quality of our HVAC systems and water delivery was free from contaminants. Looking to enhance the quality of our water supply, and then providing hygiene support, both physically and educationally within the program management that we have for our facilities. So here's another well in practice slide of an office in London related to water testing and filtration. And we actually commission LEED projects as well as well projects. And the well stuff is really interesting because we'll take air quality samples, we'll take water quality samples, we do lighting analysis, and several other things that go beyond what you would typically see in a commissioning process to ensure that the minimum level of quality is there to the benefit of all those people in there. One of the well features that we'll touch down on later related to light is circadian rhythm. And we can see this abundant daylighting flowing into the space, providing really good daylighting and supporting people's circadian rhythm. Nourishment is something that's drastically different and not typically included or even referenced in green building rating systems globally. But within WELL, this is one of the key things. And we look to encourage better eating habits by creating food environments where the healthiest choice is the easiest choice. So we have things like making sure that we have a lot of knowledge and information and education around things like fruits and vegetables, food advertising and education, as I mentioned, mindful eating spaces, nutrition transparency. So having that nutrition information available on site for the foods that are shared in the facilities. Looking at our choices around refined ingredients, looking at food preparation guidelines. We actually go so far as to ensure there's separate containers for different food types and vegetable types within our refrigerators so we don't end up with a cross-contamination type thing. Really adhering to very good food prep guidelines. Portion management is one of the big things. And within Well, we even got to a point of sizing plates and cups that we use so that you get appropriate portion sizes and not, having a 14-inch diameter plate seeming like you've got nothing on your plate when in actual fact you've got more than an adequate meal in front of you. The ability for on-site food production is really great as part of this nourishment section. Accommodations for special diets, and then responsible food sourcing are all items that fall into nourishment. Passive and active methods for achieving mold control in humid environments. And this is, for example, Pacific Northwest. This is a question. So I'll answer live. And, for that question, we look to make sure that we have, filtration in place. We look at making sure we have an adequate amount of outdoor air circulation such that we can have a better control of the humidity. And really that level of humidity that we'd look for, we use ASHRAE 55 to try and make sure that we have the environment in that correct psychrometric area that's respective for the area we're in. And you may even get to a point where we're doing interior dehumidification in environments that are very humid to help provide better conditions for the occupants. So moving on. So I talked about site-based gardening, and here's this really great example from Cook Fox, their location in New York City, in downtown New York. And you can see the raised gardens that they have here with an abundant amount of stuff that they're growing, vegetables, herbs, all on their rooftop gardens. And actually, this is a really good use of a resource because they get enough rainfall in New York City that they rarely have to use irrigation to maintain these gardens. Certainly a whole lot less than if they weren't being responsible. And it's a great use of a space, and it also abates carbon dioxide at that location. So super pluses. We touched down on light really briefly, and really what's at issue is disruption and desynchronization of our body's circadian rhythm. And that's been linked to things like obesity, diabetes, depression, and other metabolic disorders. So I've got this college dorm rooms without windows, and I'd like to do that at the end, if you don't mind, because I think it's a really big topic. And we actually had I facilitated a Global Lead Fellows call this morning, and it was one of the things that we brought up in that. So I'll share some perspective from the roughly 320 Lead Fellows from around the planet, and what we thought almost in unison. So give me a nudge on that one after, and we'll revisit it, please. So light, what we're looking to benefit from daylight and lighting systems that are designed to increase our alertness, enhance experience, and promote sleep. We look to get appropriate light exposure to support our circadian rhythm. We look to try and get circadian rhythm lighting design incorporated. And with the move to LED lighting, we actually have found a way to get there versus old school, incandescent or fluorescent lighting. We do a visual quality of lighting design so that we have, reasonable and respective CRIs. We do daylight simulation modeling of our spaces that we design. We look to get visual balance so we don't have super bright spaces, super dark spaces. We understand the necessity or the positives from doing highlighting in spaces, but we look to reduce that very drastic contrast between areas that aren't lit at all and areas that are highlighted. We're looking, for electrical light quality, and I touched down on that briefly. Glare control is something huge. When you get the ability to do abundant daylighting, yet, your daylight source is 5,000 foot candles. That's not good for you. And I serve on the board for National Fenestration Rating Council. We actually do ratings now on fenestration systems. And, an asterisk happens when, you have more than 500 foot candles of lighting, because at that point you're in a glare situation, especially if the light is coming in from the side, or even behind you and dimming the screen that you're trying to look at. The occupant's ability for their own personalized lighting control, and this is something we saw as a take up in LEED, where task lights for desk spaces were a way that you could do that and get to earning credits. And then we saw a correlation between that and the ability to dim the general lights in the building somewhat. So we weren't always functioning at 180 foot candles. And then, implementing daylight design strategies is again something that we look to do within well-designed spaces. And here's a really good IRUP's office in Boston, where they're looking to do circadian light balance. And above, you can see the uplight instead of a downlight. So the light fixtures, the rectangular prism that has light bouncing off the ceiling surface to softly fall back into the space, reduces glare. We see fenestration in the left of the window and even behind the person in the seat. But there's obviously blinds there because there's not a monster shadow. We see a soft shadow on the table. And then we see lights where they're needed. There's pendants over an island space and under cabinet lighting in that kitchen space. And again, you notice there's two refrigerators here in the kitchens to, amend and provide sufficient storage space and different compartments for foods, as I mentioned earlier. Movement's another one of the things that we do, and we look to promote active living through environmental design strategies and policies, and include active buildings and communities. Ergonomics and design, in that also includes the furniture and tools that you work with, which are the active furnishings. So, stand-up desks or raising and lower desks, the ability to optimize the workspace for your specific physical proportions and needs. We look to do things like a circulation network, providing facilities for active occupants. We look at site planning and selection. We look at trying to be in a very walkable community when we do these buildings. Providing physical activity opportunities and promotions, like assistance with joining gyms and having other physical activities that go on. Providing physical activity spaces and equipment. So everything from, having a gym in your building to just having walking spaces, outdoor gardening spaces, stuff that goes on. And then self-monitoring with things like Fitbits and other things that help you track your movement as well as other health conditions. I'm going to take a quick peek. I got 2 questions and answers here. And how close can artificial lighting come to daylighting? Typically, we've seen stuff in and around 95 or better percent. And natural daylighting is really effective for diagnosing patients. And certainly artificial lighting can cast, palls on skin and different colors that lead to poor diagnosis. And this is really a great question, Leonard. Thank you. And really, it gets to the fact that we've seen that poor fluorescent lighting really obstructs and adds extra blues to what we're looking at, and really can mess up our rendition and in that case diagnosis. So it's a really great observation and question. Thank you. In practice movement, this is in Mountain View, Symantec, and you can see that they've got a walking path around the campuses of their buildings, within the buildings as well, that ends up being a quarter-mile loop. And, it's an ability for you to, transition between spaces and also just get up and have some activity. And, one of the key things that you can do for health is having movement, on an hourly basis. It really helps with everything related to your health. Thermal comfort's a big issue, and the between air and those impacts related to thermal comfort, we see that sort of confluence of needs of consideration when we balance both of those. So, leading research indicates employees perform 15% poorer when the office is overheated, or 14% poorer when the office is cold. So, that thermal discomfort is also known to play a role in sick building syndromes. Those things lead to decreases in productivity. And one of the key things that went on with WELL early on was, in addition to your health and wellness, the building owner was gaining from additional productivity as a result of reducing these environmental detriments and things that impeded your ability to perform at your peak. So within thermal comfort, we're looking to maximize your productivity through improved HVAC system design and by meeting thermal preferences. So we set performance metrics. We encourage radiant thermal comfort. In the radiant thermal comfort is really great, and it's one of the things we're moving to in code, as I'm sure most people attending today realize, where we separate the heating and cooling function from the air movement and air exchange function. And what that allows us to do is really have a better use of energy to get us the difference between air supply and thermal comfort. And, when we look at ASHRAE 62.1 and we look at ASHRAE 55, and the desire there for minimum amount of air quality, it doesn't say minimum amount of air quality and heat, minimum amount of air quality, quantity, and cool. It's minimum amount of outdoor air quantity to a space, that you're occupying. So really impactful if we realize, that dichotomy and separate the two things. Getting back to our bullet points here, thermal zoning, monitoring of, our HVAC system design stuff, humidity control, again, having that active in areas that we really need it. For both adding humidity and dehumidifying, and then the opportunity for individual controls. And Rocky Mountain Institute did something not exactly related to WELL, but they designed an office chair with a heating, cooling, air circulation system in it, to try and do a study around if the chair could be tuned to the person and what they like, because they saw that the ideal differential temperature that the occupants wanted was 6 degrees Fahrenheit. In order to get that, accurate, some people wanted it cooler, some people wanted it warmer. If the chair provided, 85% of that need, then the person was, as it were, dialed into those conditions that they were hoping to see. And again, in Taipei, Taiwan, we see the what do you call it? The air distribution cassettes in the ceiling, and open plenum with returns, and all kinds of features included here to really work on best of thermal comfort. We see the opportunity because of the floor system to do radiant underneath for heating when needed in an environment like Taipei and Taiwan. So you'd have an opportunity to use different types of systems to provide heating and cooling. Let's see what I got. I've got a question or a comment from Anne. Sorry, Daniel, I completely understand what designers. Okay, so Anne has got a question about getting clients to a certain level. Is there a process as designers to be accredited like LEED? Oh yes, yeah, designers And I'll touch down on that. You can become a well-accredited professional, and we certainly do a ton of education out there around this stuff. I'm thinking I touched down on how to get there, and healthcare is also a place where we can do certifications. So let's visit that a little later. We're not going to ignore it because I'm covering it for the next mostly 2 hours. Thank you, Ann. Sound, improving our experience with optimal acoustic comfort parameters. So doing active things like sound mapping of the facility, sound reducing surfaces. We saw one of the things when we started doing lead projects where we had all these hard surfaces, and all of a sudden we had all these reverberant noises. And, in future versions of the rating systems, we started looking at what was necessary to address those maximum noise levels. And this is something that just, as a commissioning professional and a building sciences professional, HVAC systems can be mitigated, their noise levels, from being really distractive to something that's much calmer. And that's, by us doing things like flexible connections and other steps that we take to minimize that echo and reverberant noise and mechanical noise. A minimum background sound, providing sound barriers that are physical or electronic and active, looking at the reverberation time in basically that echo that I started to describe, and how that starts to interrupt what we've got going on, what we're doing, and what do we do to try and mitigate that and correct it. And then I touched down enhanced audio devices using other stuff like noise cancellation, active noise cancellation, to help us in situations where we may be struggling to minimize reverberant sound. And this is a great example in Australia. And I'm going to touch down I'll touch down on now, but we can see that there's a meeting space with two sort of alcove things where you can actually talk, but your voice isn't carried all over the place. It's got an echo absorptive materials all around you. The carpet below is absorptive, and even the wood in the ceiling above is, providing a flanking to basically stop linear noise transmission in a very effective way. So there's many things in this room that act in concert to reduce, the echo sounds and improve the sound quality. Let's see what I've got. I've got a question. I'm going to, Christina, I'm going to touch down on your question after, because it touches down on food and nutrition, but I think there's other things that we're going to cover that'll apply to that as well. Okay. Materials, and this is a huge one because we've seen that our exposure to materials can lead to a lot of health situations. So we look to reduce our human exposure to hazardous building materials, things like lead, asbestos, PCBs, and mercury. We can't install those in buildings, and we need to look to make sure that they aren't errantly getting involved in the stuff that we design and specify. And if they're in a building that we have as an existing one, we look at ways and means to remove that stuff. CCA and lead management, site remediations for existing buildings, material restrictions, COC restrictions, the chain of custody restrictions, material transparency in getting materials that are rated and certified for use, that are low VOCs, they're not off gassing, they're not dangerous in use, optimization of materials that are positive, waste management profiles, so that we're doing both waste in a way that's safe as well as recycling. minimum and low hazard pesticide use, which we found some scary data from LEAD that got even more so when we started into the well process about some of the pesticides that were being used, exterior and interior, that had some serious side effects. And then a biggie in operations and maintenance, cleaning products and protocols. What do we do to effectively clean, yet at the same time not provide hazards or a basis for hazards? And we see the interior design headquarters in DC, and this is all about stuff that's there. So we see furniture from human scale, furniture from, it looks like Eames. The flooring appears to be Mohawk, the gray one. The purple one also appears to be Mohawk. We see dividers for, a little bit of audio protection in that open surface room. All of these materials that are being used, the paints, the blinds, are all potential hazards, but they're all potential opportunities to have a better, more sustainable, and much safer and healthier and well place to be in. And it's really great that we have a lot of the work done and started. So the libraries of these materials, they're not hard to find anymore. It's not like when we first started Living Building Challenge in the red list, and it was impossible to find a wet flashing for the exterior of a building that wasn't poisonous. We've really come along a long ways in the last 10 dozen years to really making our selection of materials much more broad-based and certainly much more healthy. Mind is a really big category within well. Over 30% of adults will experience mental health conditions during their lifespan. And depression alone is considered to be one of the largest causes of disability worldwide. And, it's interesting because there's the copyright on this session is 2020. And, we're seeing the impacts of this as a result of the pandemic. Excuse me. In a big attribute, and we're seeing that we can improve those environments and conditions a lot by positive consideration of what we do, build, and looking at wellness and health. So we support cognitive and emotional health through design, technology, and treatment strategies. We look to do a promotion around mental health, education, as well as active stuff around stress management, providing biophilia and a connection to nature, restorative opportunities and spaces so that you have a place to recover within the workspace. Tobacco cessation is huge. Connection to place, and that place goes both the facility that you're in as well as the community that you're in how you're part of a community is also something that's really important for you to have good mental health and outlook. Providing mental health services and education, and then substance abuse and use services as well. And this is a meditation spot, relaxation spot for Mind Fitness in Tokyo. And, we can see that this is very much a place where you can get to and meditate perhaps and focus on your chi. I touched down briefly on community and its correlation with other stuff that we do, but we're looking to establish inclusive, integrated communities through social equity, civic engagement, and accessible design, health and wellness promotion, family and parent support, accessibility and universal design as a key thing, emergency preparedness and civic engagement, occupant surveys, diversity and inclusion, both education and activity, providing emergency resources and health services and benefits are all in this category. And really, this is about being responsible back to the workforce and the community that you're in, and how do we transition our workplace into being an integral part of the community that we're in. And, this is IWBI's headquarters, and I believe it's a 135-year-old building in New York City. And actually, I didn't notice this image before, but this is the VP of Well in Australia. One of my friends and colleagues is sitting here in the right of the image, and super active in education and advocacy in Australia and in the Pacific Rim. So we're transitioning into getting to know Well now that we've covered the rating system very, very quickly. And, behind Well, we see Nathan Stodel here in the top left, and the new CEO of Well, Rachel Gutter, in the top right, Rick Fedrizzi down below in this image. And, what's really hilarious is the person out of focus in this image on the bottom left with the beige white shirt on is actually myself. At one of our conferences, I believe it was Greenbuild in 2019. So it was really surprising to see the slide that I'd made it. I teased Rick about why am I out of focus, and so he threw an arm around me and took a selfie for us after I saw these slides last December when they published this latest deck that's been updated since. So our vision for IWBI is quite simple: help people thrive through better buildings, stronger communities, thriving planet, and revolutionary organizations that look to do things holistically. We touched down a little bit on our evolution of Well and how do you become certified, or how do you become more knowledgeable. The Well AP credential was launched in 2016, and I was actually one of the very first Well APs. We have a few Well APs in the state of Nevada, and I'm the only faculty member in the state of Nevada, and again, the only lead fellow in the state of Nevada. We launched the community standard we touched down on in 17, Well V2 in 18, portfolio started in 19. The Well Health Safety Rating, I won't touch down on this too much currently because we're going to do that in the second half of our presentation. And then we voted and accepted the building standard for V2, I believe it was last July in 2020. So what we're looking to do and translating into practice, we're looking to be equitable, provide application that's global, using evidence-based approach and scientific approach. It's not guesswork, and it's not motivated by anything else. The rating system is very technically robust, and the reference guide is several hundred pages, but the reference materials that we use to back up all of those features, it's a 100-point rating system. Number in the hundreds and hundreds. I think it was something like 1,400 documents the last time I looked at it. Well needs to be customer focused to make sure that we're not only providing what we do in our mission, but also having an ear and understanding at what the public wants. And then being resilient is something huge that's really taken precedence in Well in addition. So, pathways for the journey: Well certification for buildings, Well AP for professional accreditation. You can become a member of the IWBI if you have, if you're a REIT, or you're working with a REIT, or somebody who has a group of facilities. You can do portfolio for both Well and for Well Health Safety Rating. Well's validated by GBCI, the same organization that reviews LEED projects. And you see this Well decal on a door to this restaurant and this retail space. I'm not going to dive down deeply into this slide, but they like to make sure that the accomplishments are known and celebrated. And we renew every 3 years a Well certified facility. So this was actually a slide that may have been shared with you about the key things that we were going to cover: operational policies, maintenance protocols, emergency plans, and stakeholder education and engagement. when we look at the well health safety rating system. This is something that you can do. So this decal label has a QR code that's very specific to your building. And when you get your certification done, that QR code comes back to you, and you can actually have these transfers made for your project. So somebody can just scan the QR code, go to the website, and gain additional insight onto your accomplishments and what you're doing. Again, well certification is like LEED, 40 points for bronze, 50 for silver, 60 for gold, and a jump to 80 for platinum, based on a 100-point system with innovation type credits. We verify every project by doing physical on-site testing, looking at performance reviews to complete the performance verification of the projects for their certifications. We touched down on portfolio briefly, so I'm not going to beat this up because I want to make sure that we've got time for Q&A, and it looks like we've got about 12, 15 minutes left to make it there. So in portfolio, the really cool thing about portfolio, this label is good, and I'll just touch down on it because you may or may not have seen this, but your portfolio will have this ability to have this on a website or displayed as part of a education platform system within your facility. Total people impacted by the portfolio that you're in, the total size of the portfolio, how many projects are in the portfolio, in the actual dynamic score of that. It's a pretty cool thing. You know, obviously we look at the sustainable development goals and you know, an alignment with those. So it's really great that you know, the UN Sustainable Development Goals were developed in the same place in New York City, you know, with contributions from the planet, obviously, at the UN, and the IWBI headquarters is in New York City as well. So there's lots of opportunity for collaboration between the organizations. Oh, what did I just miss? Membership for companies, and you save on your what do you call it, certification costs. We're going to touch down on the health safety rating, on the preparedness, and this was I was one of the first group of people contacted to join this task force that we did on preparedness, you know, for COVID-19 and resilience and recovery. I touched down a little bit on LEED and WELL, but basically WELL collaborates very well, and there's crosswalks with all the valid green building rating systems on the planet on things that you do in one to gain you recognition in the other, and so on. And the reason for that is buildings and communities are key to having us realize our wellness goals, making people healthier globally, in addition to making our buildings, you know, safer, more efficient to operate in control. So WELL is really moving exponentially, and I wanted to share these two sets of numbers. So the first sets of numbers above, you know, the 7,090 WELL APs on the planet was from the end of November 2020. 10,194 WELL APs on the planet affected this afternoon. And look at this number jump. You know, so we've got 20,000 people, a growth from 14,000 people. What is that? 30? No, just 40% in a year, which is great. But this is really phenomenal. 32,000 projects. 3.1 billion square feet in 98 countries. That changes from 5,000 projects only a year ago. So we're seeing that, you know, the exponential geometric uptake of WELL. In one of the countries that's huge for it is Australia. You know, the last stat that I had was 28% of every building submitted for permitting in Australia is registered for WELL. It's the country that's taking the most. And one of the reasons for that was the image with my colleague Jack Noonan in it. Jack has really done a great job of educating around the small delta in cost versus the huge benefit from implementing well practices and even going that step further to well certification. So within that economy, we see all these numbers. Wellness real estate a year ago was 134 billion. In numbers, we see wellness tourism, 639 billion annually. Things like preventative and personalized medicine and public health, 575 billion. Look at nutrition and weight loss and healthy eating, 700 plus billion. So, 4.2 trillion dollars in 2017. That's how big the global health and wellness economy is. And, the leaders behind the International Well Building Institute really understood this far in advance, to lay out the money to actually start the institute and get the experts on the planet to get there. CBRE did the very first office space in Los Angeles to get a pilot well certification. And then they moved forward with doing Toronto and Vancouver, and you could see daylight, circadian lighting, ventilation, all the things that you would look to do to, make your project better. We saw a RUPS office in Boston as part of the things we had. Residences in Hollywood, were 80% leased 6 months after opening, and they get top of market rents. They include things like biophilia design, natural materials, noise abatement, highest quality ventilation and air quality, lots of daylighting and glazing. So the case, why would you look at it? And this was a study done by ULI. In investing for health. Oh, and this is Michaela. She's back in Australia leading education programming for the Pacific Rim for IWBI now. The growing number of studies show company promotion of employee health and well-being yields a higher corporate financial value, spurred on the need for more comprehensive, comparable, and standardized health and well-being metrics. And we're seeing this certainly in the architecture world, and in the commercial real estate world, with the huge uptake of ESG reporting. Should we invest for health? Of course we should. The numbers are there. We even get involved in demonstrating social impact, and I just touched down on ESG and how well properties really help organizations, make a stand on what they're willing to commit to, to take 3 steps forward in what they do for ESG. I'll go back: environment, societal, and governance, ESG. And, why should we invest for our health? Well, maybe because 92% of what we spend for what goes on in a building is the cost of having people there. That's what goes on in a span of time. And 6% of the money laid out in that span of time in 25 years is the actual cost of the facility. So the cost of the people, making sure the facility works for them, is just a monstrously huge investment. These are just quotes that go on. We have country briefs. When you go to IWBI, there's just a multitude of information on well and so on. We got a question from Frank: how has well evolved with the COVID pandemic? And we actually developed the well health safety rating to deal with not just COVID, but other pandemic stuff. And opioid crisis is one of the things that's in, the wellness nutrition category, looking at things that would be sources for, potential abuse, and how do we get there? So I'm going to flip through a few more slides and get back to Dormzilla and our other question. So, here are some hidden costs of poor well-being. We have direct costs from, the employer's perspective immediately of workers' compensation. Are your attendees in your facility present? Costs of medical and health insurance, absenteeism, disability, those things are always instant. But then we see the hidden costs and the bigger things, delays, accidents, inconveniences, turnovers, under and overstaffing, and really difficulty with engagement and morals for your organizations. Rachel stated, you can't design your way out of burnout. It's got to be a combination of design and organizational intervention supported by leadership and culture, where we actually create places that are supportive of people, and not super focused on quadruple tasking beyond multitasking. We see within a well-certified space, we've got a 100% participation, and then in lesser ones, only at 20 to 40% of wellness consideration in the workplace. CBRE Madrid reported that 80% of their new employees believe that their new office enabled them to be more productive. And actually, I did a project in Shanghai that we completed in late 15. And the people loved it so much, we couldn't understand why our net zero energy didn't work. It's because they were packing duffel bags and staying at the office and camping out overnight, several nights of the week. So I was the bad news delivery guy when I had to institute a maximum 14-hour workday. They were quite disappointed that they couldn't stay, for a 2-day span in that facility. And these calculations from ASID indicate it will recoup the investment, the delta investment to go to well in the first 5 years of a 10-year lease, when you consider the increased productivity, retention, and energy savings. And we saw some studies that we did for mechanical system stuff and lighting for a project that was doing well, where we saw a 16% increase in productivity from doing 4 initiatives that were, energy saving and wellness promoting. So, that the ROI cost on that stuff was months, wasn't years. Here's some examples of well-certified projects, and I'm not going to regurgitate them all, just take a quick gander, but they're certainly all over the planet, here in America, Canada, Asia, Australia, France, in other places. So, this is my slide where I was supposed to describe what we can do for next steps, but I think I'm at Q&A time. And here's something for everybody to look at. There's webcasts at IWBI that touch down on everything. And we see stuff like the former senior VP of USGBC, Kimberly Lewis, hosting Power of Place. My good buddy, Dr. Whitney Austin, doing Places Matter. And Dr. Joseph Allen, I don't know if anybody's familiar with him, one of the people I collaborated with on doing the Well Health Safety Rating. So I'm going to do a stop share screen. You should still see me, and I'm going to jump to the Q&A so that we can try and close this out and get a bio break before we get started on the second half. Stacy, how are we doing on your end?
We're good. I can see you. We want to try to close out both of your presentations by around 5:35-ish.
Yep.
Okay.
The Well Health Safety Rating is going to be quicker because it's a little bit higher level, but there'll still be opportunity to talk about it. So I'm going to answer these couple of questions. So we had this big discussion about the 90 some odd year old person or 80 some odd year old person wanting to donate a couple $100 million to build bunkers for dormitories in just outside of Santa Barbara. And, universally all are, over 100 lead fellows on that call this morning that I helped facilitate were just adamant that we needed to do something. So we're looking at letting the state know the problem that we have there, and why that even got to a point of a nexus was that the school, the college, has their own effectively district that let them get away with this stuff. But still there's a mandate that they comply to certain stuff in the California Building Code, Title 24, and California Energy Commission. So I brought up the attributes about zero fresh air to those rooms, which is, not allowed in any ASHRAE, simulation over the last 25 years. So this thing can't be permitted, even though they're an independent state. And we talked about actually, co-signing on a letter of, of harsh criticism of what's gone on with that dorm Zilla application, to move that forward and let them know that that's not going to get certified, because the facilities are required to gain a LEED Silver certification, which isn't going to happen if you don't have fresh air into those rooms. But we want to be more adamant than that it doesn't meet the minimum program requirements if you're forcing people to live in a bunker. So hopefully I'm touching down on Dormzilla. Does a well program apply to single family homes? And they're transitioning to certainly you can apply it to single family home, Anthony, but they're trying to develop stuff that's most specifically there. So there's a Delos program for homes that's actually in the midst of looking at best practices and so on. I'm not sure if you attended the International Builders Show in 2020, but Delos had a very big presence that were promoting wellness in the built environment. So at some point soon, we should see certifications for home. And Christina, I think I answered part of your question. The food and nutrition requirements being deal breakers, applying well to competitive multi-tenant leasing scenarios. So you're required to do the education portion, but you're not required hardcore to implement those programs. So it's not a mandatory that you completely adopt all the stuff around nutrition. There are a few items that you have to do, and they're primarily around education. And I think one of the big ones that's tough is the quantity of sugar in beverages in vending machines was one of the few things that wasn't necessarily tough, but it was one of those things that, needed further consideration. Michael asks, do you foresee the inclusion of well principles and goals being incorporated into future building codes? And my goal there is yes, but we're seeing some of that already insofar as lighting, insofar as commissioning, where we're looking to deliver more healthy spaces for people. And it's sad that we've had to codify things in order to get those elements included. But, I think that stuff around, lighting we're seeing in the International Energy Code, I think we can go a long ways further on it, but we've made some progress. Carlos, I'm not sure if there's studies on well buildings improving migraine issues, but I would believe that we've got something in our vast, resources thing pointing to the fact that, in a well facility, you're doing lots of stuff actively to mitigate those types of things. Jonathan asked, do you see a big push for well and design of residential versus commercial with COVID pushing people? Yeah, so multifamily residential and commercial are both being really much more considerate. And when I touch down on the well health safety rating in the next part of our presentation, I think you'll see a lot of stuff that sort of reinforces that it's really easy to attain, and it's a matter of getting the message out there. And I really think that the ad campaign around the well health safety rating with with Lady Gaga and Serena Williams and Michael Jordan and Michael B. Jordan, excuse me, and in several other people coming out and J-Lo and others coming out in really deep support of what we're up to and why the well health safety rating is good for people. We see that consideration for holistic, wellness take 3 steps up. And Joseph, this is awesome that keys to wellness that you got as far as your education since 1971, and you're incorporating it into what you do. That's amazing to hear, and it's really rewarding to hear. So thank you, Joseph, for that comment. Particular color, temperature, or range that WELL recommends for lighting. Online, when you go to wellcertified.com, you can research, Kevin, all of that deep stuff within lighting for both the color temperature and the lighting levels that we look to have in order to gain those credits. I guess I'm saying thank you back to Peter for a reference on Reno. And first presentation of the day, pandemic causing redesign of much of the built environment and dealing with rehab scenarios. Yeah, this is a really good question, James. And I think we're starting to see how we can look at changing those different office topologies and space topologies to better, address stuff and certainly demonstrate value to clients with their spaces. But the uptick, you saw the numbers, the uptick in registered and certified spaces in the last year, especially since the pandemic started, is absolutely monstrous. So I'm going to end that session. And Stacy, can you either jump back in or, there you are. Should we do just a quickie bio break for anybody? Say 5 minutes and jump back into it. Does that sound fair?
Sure,
I want to make sure people.
Yeah, we had a break just before you came on, and okay. We'll just keep recording. So when you're ready to jump back in, you can just start.
Okay. So I'm going to do this. I'm just going to change presentations and I'll be back. Okay, everyone, this is Daniel again. I am back, and you should see our the next part of our presentation. And Barrett, I'm going to, we've got, Barrett's got a really great question from the last presentation. Hot soil issues in Las Vegas. We have many older buildings with cast iron sewer pipe disintegrating in and under buildings. I've seen levels of hydrogen H2S gas elevated in buildings. Newer building codes allows CPVC piping. Have you seen this in other areas of the country? So this is a little bit different, but we've actually seen things like, a kind of inflatable fiberglass piping that goes in to repair, piping. I used to be with Las Vegas Valley Water District, Southern Nevada Water Authority, for a span of just a little over 7 years, and touched down a lot of stuff that we had going on then. And there's a whole bunch of trenchless repairs for these types of situations where you have, disintegrating piping that needs to be addressed. And one of those best ones was this fiberglass stuff. So it's folded up kind of like a taco, and it gets drawn through the pipe, and then you basically pull like an expander rubberized thing through it to get it to expand and stick to the outside walls of the old piping. And once it cures, it's good. The sad thing is you got to take stuff out of service to get there. So a little bit off our topic, but I think it's still a great relevant question. So thanks, Barrett. And I'm going to get rolling. So we're going to talk about the well health safety rating, which we launched in 2020. And it's really the goal and focus was to prioritize health and safety in our post-COVID-19 world. And that's post-arrival of COVID-19 with a third-party verified well health safety rating. So again, this is my intro slide. I guess I can regurgitate that I was on the task force on COVID-19 and other respiratory infections, prevention and preparedness, resilience and recovery. And also one of the contributing authors to the well health safety rating. Again, this intro slide. So what the well health safety rating started as our task force, but it's an evidence-based approach to help support spaces that advance health and safety. And really that task force, we grew to a group of about 600 public health experts, virologists, officials, academics, business leaders, designers, architects, building scientists, and even real estate professionals. We initiated our work in March of 2020. We did an initial 6-week, very hard push to try and collect best practices, gain a deep amount of institutional knowledge, see how it correlated to our well building standards, and then prepared advisories for the different types of buildings that we would see this adapted into, including sports and entertainment venues, hospitality, even airports and shopping malls. Provided a whole lot of insight for us to get there. Here's the group of co-chairs that we had from Christina Gamboa, who's the CEO of the World Building Council. Down on the bottom left, Joseph Allen from Harvard, former Surgeon General Richard Carmona. So we had a really great, really wide, diverse group of people contributing to the task force and the work that we were doing to gain the information. And here's a shot of some of the concept advisors, not all of the people, in here. I see representatives from Armstrong Flooring and from the Health Product Declaration Collaborative, and several colleagues that I worked with while we were in process working our way through the development of the Well Health Safety Rating. And of course, these numbers are old, from 2020. I shared numbers from today of where we are now with relationship to well projects. We know we're well over 1 billion square feet now, and I think it was 98 countries that we're in currently. The pathways, so I'm not going to regurgitate this slide. So this Well Health Safety Rating is an evidence-based, third-party verified rating focused on operational policies, maintenance protocols, emergency plans, and stakeholder education and engagement to address a post-COVID-19 environment now and in the broader health and safety related issues into the future. So we're looking to have the adoption of policies and procedures that facilitate healthy and safe workplace or facility. In facility would be things like shopping malls and arenas and other places that are a little different than workplaces, but you would attend. We could even do this in a grocery store, for example. Looking at maintenance protocols and providing guidance and leadership for the implementation of facilities management and maintenance protocols designed to reduce the risk of infectious disease transmission. And, this stuff was really great when we worked on our collaboration on this, to really work at defining best practices from around the planet and realizing that there was times where there was regional stuff that we had going on as well. The development of an emergency plan and protocols that, when applied, helped to safeguard building users. And really, this was all about being prepared. Stakeholder education and engagement, regular communications, education, signage, and even really web-based sources of resource and information to capture important updates, activities, and information to be shared. So those are really key things behind what we're trying to accomplish with the Well Health Safety Rating in providing those things. So, how does it actually work? We look at keeping spaces clean and sanitized as one of the key things we start with, providing essential health benefits and services as part of the base thing that we do as an organization or a host of a facility. Communicate those health and safety efforts to people that are attending, working in our facilities. Have that emergency preparedness plan to help everyone prepare for an emergency. And then the only part that starts to cost money is assessing the air and water quality of the facility, and if they're going to be negatively contributing to the potential of negative effects. So our strategies and features around those bullet points that we just shared, with cleaning and sanitation procedures, we look at supporting hand washing, we look at reducing surface contact, we look at improving cleaning practices. Selecting preferred cleaning products is one of the biggest things that we can do, and reducing respiratory particle exposure. And that's around, our air quality and what we do in our cleaning and sanitation procedures. The emergency preparedness programs, of course, we're developing an emergency preparedness plan, creating a business continuity plan, what to do in the event that something happens, where we can continue to be a resource for the people who use our facility and work in our facility and occupy our facility. Creating a plan for healthy reentry should we have to evacuate and leave the facility. Providing emergency resources and bolstering emergency resilience. And this emergency preparedness program is not something new. I did work years and years ago for the National Science Foundation, where we looked at emergency preparedness for healthcare facilities in how to upgrade what they were doing. So, these best practices we've had for years and years. The challenge that we didn't have is to share those, universally, or make that information readily available for people. Health service resources are things like providing sick leave, providing health benefits, supporting mental health recovery, which we've seen has been a big uptick as a result of COVID and the impacts around it. Promote flu vaccines as a way to avoid, getting sick. Promoting a smoke-free environment. One of the key things that we can do, and I mentioned I did a VOC training for some people last week, and it's amazing to know how many noxious and hazardous, beyond carcinogenic elements and compounds are in cigarettes and cigarette smoke, and really how nasty, negative they are for somebody's health. Air and water quality management. We look to assess ventilation. Are we getting adequate ventilation or not is one of those key things that we look at. We maintain air treatment systems, which is our filtrations and so on. So the quantity and delivery of the air, the quality that we can use to make sure that the air delivery is good, developing a Legionella management plan, managing mold and moisture that we talked about earlier today, and then monitoring air and water quality. It's amazing how easy that is to do with little things like, sensors. I actually got a sensor in my office / home, my workspace that takes both, an open area for work and then our private living area. But we've got something that does temperature, it does humidity, it does VOCs, it does, the PPMs, it does daylighting levels. It basically has 7 sensors in it, and it's connected to your Ethernet, Wi-Fi, and it moves that stuff into a cloud where you can look at it and manage. And it was one of the things that got us to add additional vegetation, plants in the interior, because we had indoor CO2 levels in the low 600s. We added a bunch of plants, and all of a sudden our CO2 levels are in the low 400s or dip into the 300s as a result, just from having that information at hand. And then we go into stakeholder engagement and communication, where we do things to promote health and wellness, share food inspection information. And that's, as you can see, this stuff isn't rocket science. But on the flip side of the coin, it's very good at taking amalgamation of best practices and evidence-based outcomes to inform what you can do to get there. And I said that sort of off task, that this is powered by research and experts. And I mentioned we had more than 600 experts from around the planet contributing to this. And it wasn't just individuals, it was the work they did, the studies they had, the evidence from projects. It's rooted in policies and protocols, enhanced operational policies, maintenance protocols. Creating emergency plans require little capital expenditure from the outset and all the way through their long-term adoption and continuance. The well health safety rating is validated by third-party verified review to make sure these measures are adopted. And there's 21 measures listed, and in order to get there, you need to get 15 of the measures. And then the stuff that we're talking about, especially the monitoring, is supported by technology and tools. You have secure cloud-based management tools and templates that you can use as information to help you get started on this and to document what you're doing in order to maintain your certification. So we talked about applicabilities in movie theaters, sports and entertainment facilities, education, retail, multifamily, industrial, offices, restaurants, hotels, restaurants. I talked about shopping malls and several other places in here that I'll get there. Where you can apply that. We look for the seal, and you saw the PR stuff around the seal thing with that TV ad campaign that had Robert De Niro and J Lo and the others I mentioned earlier. And again, you can do the well health safety rating and gain that QR code to have people, be able to automatically gain the insight into what you've done and what goes on related to health safety rating. Again, validated through a third party, GBCI, just like we would with LEED and other certifications. And again, how does it work? Keep things clean and sanitized, provide essential health services, communicate health and safety efforts, make sure everyone is prepared for an emergency, and providing monitoring of the air and water quality of the facility. And the thing that I saw when we did this for a few projects really was the effort around the Legionella plan was the thing that cost the most money. The remaining stuff was very, very easy to apply without large scale expense in any of it. So, it allows people who closed for COVID to come back and reopen with confidence. It's flexible and adaptable for different spaces, sizes, places, organizations, and facility types. I mentioned scalable. You can do one property, or you could do a portfolio with these things, and upload the work that you're doing to even an internal website or a public website that helps people get access to those key things that are in the well health safety rating that you want to look at. Again, it's verified by GBCI and accessible. The thing that they wanted to do very much on this was make sure that it was priced effectively so that you could get engaged and involved with it without having a very deep expense in getting started with it. Here's some of the organizations that started. You could see a bunch of sports teams: Pacers, Cowboys, Spurs, Yankees, Sacramento Kings, Sixers, Spago Restaurants, JP Morgan Chase. Some of their branches are there. Brookfield Properties that have offices, as well as multifamily stuff. Empire Realty Trust, yes, that's right. The Empire State Building gained this certification as well. And you even have contractors, large-scale contractors like Skanska, involved in doing this. This is a great project that I talked about Jack Noonan earlier, and he did this Monarco Tower. This is actually in the Philippines, and it not only earned WELL certification, but it was the first place in the Philippines to earn the WELL Health Safety rating. And you can see some of the great things that they incorporated in it. The developer is really awesome. She's really stands, apart from people who develop stuff simply for first costs. She looked at longevity with this development. You see RMZ Corp in Europe, who was one of the first places there to get WELL and health safety rating. And then they started and moved and did their portfolio. Yankee Stadium, we touched down on. Empire Realty Trust, that's that same Empire State Building that's there. And then some of the other properties they owned. So after doing the Empire State Building, they rolled this out into a portfolio and keep adding the properties that they own as they get the protocols in place. Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse for Cleveland Cavaliers. Together, DLF Hospitality, and so on. So how do we do it? First you look to see, how much of a reach it would be, or if it is even a reach at all, and then you enroll. Customize your approach, selecting the features that are relevant to your project and your specifics. Apply all the stuff, do the review of your stuff, and when you're feeling confident, upload your documentation for review by GBCI, who reviews it, and hopefully you achieve your well health safety rating, and well gets behind you to help you promote those things. And then, of course, just like any other certification, this has a renewal path, and it's an annual renewal path, making sure that you haven't dropped off any of your protocols that you would do in order to get there. And then you do have support every step of the way through IWBI, through well APs that are versed with the project or knowledgeable or have contributed to the project. So there's online features that help you with the process, with the features, with the documentation, the reviewing portion, and then how to go about promoting what you've done and earned along the way. So they really didn't leave any stone unturned in looking to provide support to make sure that you could get there with one building or a portfolio. And then once you've got there, you've got your minimum 15 strategies that you're pursuing, and you can see that there. And you have the checklist. Have you developed your Legionella management plan? Yes, maybe if you're in process, or if it's one of these things you're hoping to get to, but you're not going to do if you don't have to, or no. And then beyond the set checklist, there's opportunity for innovation stuff. If there's something specifically you found that could help this, that isn't even included already in the health safety rating credits and guidance. So, selecting the strategy, uploading your evidence documents, and then submitting for review. The process is pretty quick and certainly pretty easy and really great to apply across. So wellcertified.com, and when you get there, health safety rating is an opportunity you can get to. So we're at the question and answer period, and I think I've moved along fast enough so we have some time to hit some questions. So I'm going to go to what I've got. So I've got a question from Robert. Does WELL evaluate building renovations in the same manner as new building construction in their health safety ratings? So the predominantly health safety ratings, Robert, are applied to existing buildings. You can certainly apply them to something new construction to gain as well, but they're very much done in a manner for existing buildings, so that you have success in what you've got without having to rip stuff apart and renovate. And certainly much and very applicable. James provides much of this rating slide crosses many management boundaries. The mall building could be owned by a management company, at least individual entities. Yep, and actually, the building itself is supplied by multiple infrastructure providers. How does WELL actually affect change in these category, and who would be your client in this case? So you can actually, this is a really good question, James. Your client could be, what do you call it? Your client could be the owner of the facility, the core and shell, and the build out are done separately. So for example, the forum shops at Caesars have gone through sequential certifications for portions of those parts. So the access for everybody has WELL health safety rating. The individual stores can in turn get their WELL health safety rating for their places and presence in addition. So, your client could be either all or some. And, we've seen a lot of circumstances where the mall gets a WELL health safety rating and the individual tenants and spaces determine whether or not they're going to do it. It's very much analogous to us getting a core and shell certification in LEED, and then people getting their commercial interior certification following. So great question and comment. And I see one of my friends on here, Wade Simpson of Simpson Coulter, really great studio and great architects that I've had the privilege of collaborating with on a couple of occasions. And Wade shares an associate principal who's also well faculty. Okay, that's great. And you're living a certification journey in your office over the last few years. Are there more owners open to these conversations recently? And Wade, I would say definitely. We could revisit past clients of yours who closed and are wondering what they do to optimize their spend for their operational protocols and be very up to speed on doing the most and earning the WELL Health Safety rating in their facilities, even if they don't go through a full WELL certification process. So really great question, Wade. And please say hi to Sean for me. Miss you guys. Frank asks, the U.S. current situation of millions of unfilled jobs, is IWBI able to hire enough persons for the certification, recertification of facilities for WELL? And we've had no problem, Frank, with getting staff and people engaged and involved with IWBI. The demand is going, and the one great thing about IWBI is they make sure that they have staffing and resources to do everything that they need to do. Robert, I'm sorry, Robert, your previous question applies to WELL certification also, but I think that, let me see if I can get back to you and answered. Okay, so Robert had the question, does WELL evaluate building renovations? And so WELL certification we can get, Robert, in addition for existing buildings in addition to new construction. And the WELL Health Safety rating can apply to both as well. The great thing is WELL Health Safety rating can apply to it when the owner developer doesn't want to spend the monies that you would typically do to get fully WELL certified. So I hope I've sufficiently answered that question for you. Mike, how many hospitals are WELL certified? Mike, I don't know the exact number, but we do have a lot of that data on wellcertified.com on the different topologies. But healthcare, I think it may be healthcare versus hospitals is the way they categorize that building topology, because I know they look at that as one building topology. Alex Sander, design profession expected to lead certification process or a champion of the process that come from the operations team. So with WELL Health Safety rating, if you're doing a new construction project and you've decided to forego full WELL certification, the designers could determine that they the client could tell them that they wanted to do something to get there and pursue a WELL Health Safety rating that way. But the operations team could certainly be champions in an existing building to determine that they should get WELL Health Safety rating as well. So good question. James, is there a historic building category within WELL certification? And the typical answer is not specifically, but we have the opportunity to do historic buildings. I represented the International Well Building Institute's offices in New York City, which I've been to several times, are in a 135-year-old building, and they gained WELL Platinum certification for that. So you can certainly do it in a historic building for full WELL certification. In WELL Health Safety rating would be certainly much easier to do in a historic building. Getting WELL certified in a historic building without looking at doing anything additionally may be a little bit difficult, because you've got all those requirements for mechanical systems, air quality, water quality. And if you had really antiquated systems, those would be likely struggles for you. But the remainder of all of the stuff within WELL could be applied. And I'll give you an example. A lot of new buildings that are seeking WELL certification will promote stairwells in the entrance. So you'll come in and you'll have a nice grand staircase, on your way in, and you'll actually have to go around and behind the staircase to find the elevators. And that certainly works for 2, 3, 4 stories, but above that, elevators certainly take a bigger precedence in high-rise topologies. But even in high-rise topologies, we've seen that exact model take place for people to access those first couple of stories that you enter. And it's not purposely avoiding where the elevators are. They put signage, but then it gives you an opportunity to include biophilia and a little transitional stuff in the entry of the building without stepping through a set of doors and straight into into the elevator entrance. So great question, James. Nicole asked, do you anticipate WELL certification to be code required in the future? I can see cities like Berkeley and forward-thinking cities to have this become part of their plan check process. And I know parts of it. We have dialogue with different entities. So I do a lot of work in California with the California Energy Commission, with Title 24, with numerous schools. And we're seeing a transition of stuff that goes on in LEED and stuff that's been started in WELL rolling into building, goals and minimum requirements. I'm not sure if we'll get to a point where it gets codified. It would take a very progressive city, but we also have, the WELL community certification, excuse me. And we've seen places in South Forward, do a subdivision or a community with a WELL certification. So it's certainly not beyond reason or possibility, I guess I should say. But maybe in reality, it's going to take a very progressive populace and constituency to vote positive on something of that nature. I like great questions like the next one from Walter. Top difference between WELL and LEED. WELL is for people in buildings. LEED is for energy and environmental design in buildings. So even though there's a great amount of overlap between the two, WELL focuses on the healthiness of the building for the people. Great question, Walter. Michael, are there any special focuses for assisted care elderly residential facilities? And you can tailor what you do within WELL to suit the specificity of the project that you're in. But things like making sure that you've got access and ability to do stuff are definitely included in WELL. We include things like removing trip hazards and those little transitions that are 2.5 inches high between rooms, and raised door thresholds and stuff like that that turns out to be a real pain, getting that stuff done. So that stuff's included already, to make sure that we address stuff, but we don't have to do a special focus. The whole system focuses on a whole life positive process and moving that forward. Thanks, Michael. Friend of mine, Doug. Doug, thank you for the for the messages. And my road glide is still doing good. It's all polished up, and now's the season to get out and ride on it. So thanks, Doug, for the heads up and the hello. And Carol, are there any states that have tax incentives for well-being? And that's a really good question, Carol. And sadly, not yet. We did in the state of Nevada get an incentive for LEED certification that actually went on for quite some time. And it's not renewed anymore, sadly. But on this one, it's really interesting because insurance companies are really taking a look at this, especially for ways to mitigate and avoid potential liabilities from the place that you're in. And then additionally, healthcare stuff. If you've got really robust programs that promote wellness, you're seeing the incidence of occurrences in need of use of healthcare fall drastically. So I think it's a short matter of time where we see, you know, a transition to incentives or preferential treatment for well buildings. A really great question. I'm doing a double check on time. I've got 5:25, so I've got a few minutes left. I hit the outstanding questions. I don't think there's anything there, but I'm doubling back to our chat to see what I've missed from here. Scott, thank you for the presentation and thank you for attending. Really great to have over 500 people attend this. It's really fabulous. Leonard, I am wrapping it up and you're good to go, my friend. Chris, thank you for the vote of positivity. And Stacy, I'm handing it back to you and stopping sharing screen. I've got a few minutes left and I'm certainly willing to share all the time that we had allotted.
We do have,
got more questions.
We've got one more question from Santiago. Okay. He says, is the program considering research and implementations of the impact design, geometry, and proportion in the well-being of occupants?
And Santiago, the short answer is yes. And they're doing a lot of work around how design is being reinformed by response to the pandemic. You know, you can't put people in 8x8 cubes anymore and think that you're doing the right thing. So all of those differences in space and consideration and geometries are there. So well as looking at the impacts and effects, yet they're not the people who are at the forefront of telling you what you have to do. But I think we're going to see considerations in the design, which we already have, for different things in workspaces, specifically office spaces. Thank you for the question. Carlos. Carlos, you're welcome. And I'm grateful that I got a chance to share this information with everybody. It's strange. I do most of my work outside of Nevada, so it was really awesome to do something and give back to the design community here locally. It was so great to see so many people that I've worked with in the past and know as part of the attendees today. John. So John's got a great statement, and I'm gonna restate it. And thanks, John. We must solve what environment is outside the privileged built environment. With all this brain power, we as architects must solve the homeless issue. And I completely concur with what you're saying. And I think one of the strong things of this rating system is the whole ideology of integrating into the community that you're in and looking to bridge to that and looking to have opportunities, for engagement, so they have active tours of the buildings. They're looking to use what's going on to inform people. This well health safety rating is looking to create places that in the event of emergency or the pandemic is a knowledgeable and safe place for the community to gather if other places aren't there. So it's really great. And thank you for sharing that part of it. And I certainly concur that we're starting to see a homeless issue that's not being solved in other means. And I guess somebody has to take the lead on it. And, we can certainly do that. Ernest, you're welcome for using the term place. And Matthew, the great thing about the slide decks is if you go to wellcertified.com, you'll get the public positive information that the IWBI has provided for this to grab that. So wellcertified.com, and from that location, wellcertified.com, you have an absolute multitude of all kinds of stuff. You can dive down in there online specifically into one feature set at a time of those 100 points within the WELL rating system that interest you. And the thing is really great. The online thing is really great because the references to all of those credits and what's required and the reason behind it is provided as a link. So it's a really great resource to have in turn it into a shortcut for stuff that you want to go to. And then by all means, I think Stacy shared my email with everybody, but if not, Daniel at Humann, HUMANN Inc.com. And I think I can. There we go. I shared it in the chat window in the event that somebody needs to reach out. David asks, were you personally involved in the project in Taipei? And sorry, I wasn't. I've done a whole bunch of stuff in Asia. And it was funny, I was just talking to the former CEO of US Green Building Council, Mahesh, who stepped away from that role last Friday, about some of our collaboration that we had in China in 2019. So I haven't been back to Asia since the end of 19, but I'm on the phone, let's see, 3 days this week already with people in Asia about projects. So WELL is certainly hugely accepted in Asia, and we saw a humongous abundance of people seeking us out and asking us questions at Green Build 2019 in late October of 19 in Asia to ask questions specifically about WELL. And we actually have a lot of education program and stuff going on in Asia. So David, thank you for that question. Christine, oh, you're welcome for all the information, Christine. Really happy to be here amongst so many colleagues and people engaged. Stacy, I don't want to keep you too late. We're 2 minutes past.
Okay.
You're an amazing host.
Oh, thanks. Well, I think we've gotten all of the questions answered, and thank you, Daniel. I think